All right, we have people who are watching, thousands of people who are watching by YouTube today. So, welcome one and all. Yeah. Glad that you are watching if you are watching by YouTube, and if you're doing it today or doing it later in the week, we're grateful for you being a part of our Bible study together today. 2 Chronicles chapters 8 and 9. We should be able to get through 8 and 9. This is the chronicler's way of finishing up his emphasis on Solomon. Most of what he is focused on, of course, has been the building of the temple and the dedication of the temple, as you would expect. But these two chapters really kind of focus on everything he did otherwise. And he did a lot. That's part of what the chronicler is trying to do here. He's trying to lay out the evidence of Solomon's greatness. The problem from the larger perspective is that he only focuses on the good stuff. He doesn't focus on the bad stuff. And so you can turn to 1 Kings chapter 11. We've done that once before to read about it. 1 Kings chapter 11. And you will read the material that the chronicler didn't see the need to put in with his information about Solomon. Whatever those reasons are, whatever he's trying to emphasize by leaving it out, scholars make all sorts of guesses about that and spend all day long trying to talk about that. Doesn't matter. We have the whole record, and we'll make a connection to that at the last here in just a few minutes. Right. That's a big one. Well, we'll see why. We'll make our guess here why Solomon went that direction at the end. But anyway, we pick up the first part of the chapter there at the end of 20 years, during which Solomon had built the house of the Lord and his own house. Solomon rebuilt the cities that Hiram of Tyre, the king there, had given to him, and settled the people of Israel in them. So we're moving on. The temple's done. At the same time that his temple was being built, he was building his own royal palace. Not any real attention given to that, other than mention here and there, and it was opulent as well. But 20 years he spent building those two things, and then he starts to go to other things. Solomon is a builder. He builds lots of glorious buildings. He rebuilds cities, as we're going to see. He's a very capable leader. He gets stuff done. And that's part of his accomplishment, is his great building program, which takes place. And his building program helps to solidify Israel. The first cities that he is said to have rebuilt are some that Hiram has given him. I've given you a note there that in 1 Kings 9, the text there says that Solomon had given those cities to Hiram. And so, which one gave the cities to the other one? We don't know. I mean, it's, you can flip a coin. Or perhaps Hiram is giving back cities that Solomon had given to him. Why would Solomon give him cities? Remember that Solomon had a lot of materials that he got from Hiram to build his own house and to build the temple. And it could have been pavement. And that could have been border cities. That type of thing. And maybe now Hiram has given them back to him and he's rebuilding them. So not a real big deal, but the notation is different in the two places. Go to the next section, verse 3. Solomon went to Hamath Zobah and captured it. He's going to start his military advancing. Solomon is not known to be a great warrior, but he does do some military stuff. To grab cities that will help solidify his kingdom. Verse 4, he built Tadmor in the wilderness and all the storage towns that he built in Hamath. He also built Upper Beth Horon and Lower Beth Horon, fortified cities with walls, gates, and bars, and Baalath, as well as all Solomon's storage towns, and all the towns for his chariots, the towns for his cavalry, and whatever Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and in all the land of his dominion. So he's got a great building program going on. And it's primarily, as you see in those notations, it's primarily for solidifying the country and providing for its defense. Again, he is to be, honored for his strength as a king. David had to fight a lot of battles. He took care of, expanding the borders and fighting off enemies. And Solomon's able to focus on strengthening the country from within. And that's what he's doing. That's why he's got all these cities. That's what he's trying to strengthen the whole country. Verse 7, all the people who were left of the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites were not of Israel, from their descendants who were still left in the land, whom the people of Israel had not destroyed. In other words, all those people, the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, they were leftovers from when the land was conquered, when Israel came from Egypt and entered the land of Canaan and, came to possess the land. They drove out the peoples that were there. These were some who were left behind for whatever reason. However, they were left behind. So they're not native or they're not ethnic Jews. They're not part of the people of Israel. And so he turns them into slave labor, essentially. Now, we use that term slave labor. We don't know how hard it was. We don't know what they got for what they did. We don't know anything. It's enforced labor. That's the main point there. They don't have a choice, but they do have a job. So these Solomon conscripted for forced labor, as is still the case today. That is, as still the case for the day when, in that day, as the chronicler was writing. But of the people of Israel, Solomon made no slaves for his work. They were soldiers and his officers, the commanders of his chariotry and cavalry. These were the chief officers of King Solomon, 250 of them, who exercised authority over the people. So the chronicler is saying that, he conscripted these people who were left over from the previous nations that ruled in Canaan, but he didn't enslave any of the Israelites. Well, that's the question. You read in other places, and there's notation that Solomon must have conscripted some Israelites. I've got the listings there in 1 Kings 5:13. It says outright that he forced 30,000 Israelites to work on these projects. And then in 12:4, 1 Kings 12:4, it reports that the conscription of Israelites for these building programs was the reason behind the revolt of the northern tribes. After Solomon dies, the kingdom splits. And one of the reasons given in 1 Kings 12:4 for the split of the kingdom is the fact that he enslaved some of the Israelites. You've got the chronicler who's trying to tell Solomon's story and is shining as bright a light on him as he can. And so he's going to leave some of the negative stuff out, right? But you've got 1 Kings, which gives us, adds that negative side of things in its report. Of course, with the building program, not just conscripting Israelites, but how else would his building program have hurt the people of Israel? Taxes, yes. You can't build these things for free, boys and girls. Right. Yes. Solomon's son. Yeah. We'll be getting to that here shortly. It seems likely that Solomon, did for it. Now, who knows if these were criminals? Again, we don't know the details. We don't know, but it seems likely that he, made forced labor of some of the Israelites somewhere along the way. But anyway, verse 11, Solomon brought Pharaoh's daughter from the city of David to the house that he had built for her, for he said, my wife shall not live in the house of King David of Israel, for the places to which the ark of the Lord has come are holy. We haven't heard in this one about his marriage to Pharaoh's daughter. If you read 1 Kings 3:1, you'll read about it, and it's reported that he marries the daughter as a way of making a political alliance, with Egypt. But we're not told about it. But obviously, Pharaoh's daughter is not Jewish. She's a Gentile. And so the chronicler does include this note here, that even though Solomon married the Pharaoh's daughter, he wouldn't let her come into Jerusalem because she's a foreigner and Jerusalem is the holy city. And so he had a place built where she stayed outside of Jerusalem. I put a note there that perhaps this is the chronicler's way, maybe a concession to Solomon's sinful ways. Yeah, he married Pharaoh's daughter, and that, that's kind of the first of many sins, but we'll just mention the first one. He did marry her, but he kept her out of the city because it was a holy city. So that's just me. That's how it kind of hits me a little bit. Right. So she had no business being in Jerusalem. But the chronicler's saying he made sure to take care that she didn't pollute the city with her pagan ways. And this kind of sets the stage for everything else he says. The next section of verses, he's going to say Solomon pushes the worship program forward. He's introduced the temple. He's set up all the leaders, the Levites, the priests. He's got everything situated so that the worship life of Israel can move forward. And now the chronicler emphasizes that note again with what follows. So this kind of introduces it. It's a neat place for the chronicler to put it in. He wouldn't let Pharaoh's daughter, his wife, one of his wives, come into the city because she was a pagan. And so here's what else he did on the religious front. Verse 12, then Solomon offered up burnt offerings to the Lord on the altar of the Lord that he had built in front of the vestibule, as the duty of each day required. He did this daily. There was a set program for the sacrifices to be offered, and he was following them daily. Offering according to the commandment of Moses for the Sabbaths, the new moons, and the 3 annual festivals, the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, and the festival of booths. According to the ordinance of his father David, he appointed the divisions of the priests for their service and the Levites for their offices of praise and ministry, alongside the priests to the duty of each day required, and the gatekeepers in their divisions for the several gates. For so David, the man of God, had commanded. They did not turn away from what the king had commanded the priests and Levites regarding anything at all, or regarding the treasures. So he's establishing the religion of Israel in an everyday fashion in Jerusalem. I applaud Solomon. I mean, I'm making note of his dark side only because it's there, but that doesn't mean what he did wasn't great. His building program was great. He is a wise king, as we're going to. He was known for his wisdom. People came to learn from him. God had given him wisdom. And so, Solomon is a great king in many, many respects. Is any king perfect? No. So anyway, he makes sure that the religion, that goes along with the temple is put in place and is being carried out day by day by day, season by season by season. He's making sure that the people have in place the worship rituals that they're supposed to follow. Verse 16, summary note here. Thus all the work of Solomon was accomplished from the day the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid until the house of the Lord was finished completely. In other words, building the temple was the first part of it, right? And an important part of it. But the other part of it was to make sure that people follow through with the religious rituals that went along with the temple, and he took care of it. Yeah, hip hip hooray for Solomon. Yes, indeed. Give him his due. Now we're going to start to focus on his economic policies, or his trade. Then Solomon went to Ezion-Geber and Eloth on the shore of the sea in the land of Edom. Huram sent him in the care of his servants, ships and servants familiar with the sea. They went to Ophir together with the servants of Solomon and imported from there 450 talents of gold and brought it to King Solomon. That's just one note of one venture that he, orchestrated. Trade is important. Solomon is going to make Israel a prosperous nation. He's going to make it a prosperous nation. They're going to, be involved in trade, bringing in, all sorts of resources, selling things off as well. The country is going to be prosperous in many respects. We're into chapter 9 now. Queen of Sheba. When the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon, she came to Jerusalem to test him with hard questions, having a very great retinue and camels bearing spices and very much gold and precious stones. When she came to Solomon, she discussed with him all that was on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing hidden from Solomon that he could not explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba had observed the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food of his table, the seating of his officials, and the attendance of his servants and their clothing, his valets and their clothing, and his burnt offerings that he offered to the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit left in her. That's a great line. She came to take him down a notch or two, right? This guy, he's that great? Really? You can sense kind of, among the leaders of the world, here's an upstart that comes up and he's known for his wisdom and he's known for his accomplishments. And she says, let me test him. She must have been a pretty sharp cookie herself. She felt confident that she could take him down a notch or two. And so she came. Now, having said that, let's also note that Sheba, and it goes by another name, which is scholars believe is the present territory of Yemen in our day and age. She had a long journey to make, 1,400 miles to come see Solomon. And Sheba, the country, had vast resources, but they were most prized for their frankincense and myrrh. And they were a prosperous nation. And what does a good king or queen do? They're always looking to increase the profitability of their trade. So doubtless she was hoping to come down and establish a trade route. The city of Tyre is right there on the coastline of the Mediterranean. She's obviously looking to help establish some contacts and help increase trade for her own nation. And so, introduce her products to a new market. She brings a whole lot of stuff with her. Now, she's going to give some of it to Solomon as a gift, but she's not giving him all of it. She's coming on a trade mission. The president, whatever, any administration, the president always goes and visits foreign lands. Why? To establish good relationships. Why? So that maybe we can trade. Maybe we can open a new market for our goods. So the chronicler doesn't say it, but we're smart enough to understand, I can kill two birds with one stone. I can take him down a notch, and I can also get some markets established for my people. So she comes in, and she thinks a lot of herself, evidently. And she probably has the goods to back it up. But she's no match for Solomon. He is a wise king. Remember, that's the gift that God gave him. One of the gifts Solomon asked for wisdom to lead the people, and God blessed him with wisdom. And he is known in that day and age, in that area, as a man of, great wisdom. And so she comes and she puts her questions to him. As I was reading this, I was thinking of Jesus and the religious leaders. Same kind of thing is in play there. They were like, who's this upstart guy, coming along, going to teach everybody the laws of God? He hadn't gone to rabbi school or anything. He hadn't traded with anybody. What's he got to say? So they come in and they test Jesus, right? And Jesus confounds them completely. Well, that's kind of what's in play here. Sheba comes down to take out Solomon, in the intellectual stage or the wisdom stage, and, she's no match for him. And she finds that out pretty fast. But it's not just his wisdom that impresses her. This is another reason to understand that she's got other purposes for this. The house that he had built, it was a beautiful place, spectacular place. The food of his table, he ate well, don't you know? And he served fabulous meals for, dignitaries from other lands. The seating of his officials and the attendance of his servants and their clothing, his valets and their clothing. Everybody's dressed in glorious splendor. It's impressive, mighty impressive. And he's worshiping at the at the house of the Lord daily. He's making sure that the offerings. So it's a spectacle. When she comes in, she sees a well-oiled machine. She sees a very prosperous nation, and she sees, a very wise king. And so, she's shamed. She came to do him in, and, he was the real deal. So she blesses him. Give her credit for that. Coming up next. And it's a great blessing, too. So she said to the king, verse 5, "The report was true that I heard in my own land of your accomplishments and of your wisdom, but I did not believe the reports until I came and my own eyes saw it. Not even half of the greatness of your wisdom had been told to me. You far surpass the report that I had heard. Happy are your people. Happy are these your servants who continually attend you and hear your wisdom." Gosh, to have a wise ruler. Blessed be, and I'm not making any political, I'm just saying that's something every age, that's what we want, right? Blessed be the Lord your God who has delighted in you and set you on his throne as king for the Lord your God. Because your God loved Israel and wished to establish them forever, he has made you king over them so that you may execute justice and righteousness. Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold, a very great quantity of spices and precious stones. There were no spices such as those that the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. There's another hint that she was on a trade mission as well. Her land, Sheba, had spices that were greater than could be found in any other land, unique, marvelous, much to be desired. And so she makes a gift to him. How fortunate your people are to have you. God has certainly blessed you, and you are blessing God. And Israel's future is great. Just hold on to that thought. Remember what happens after Solomon dies. It looks awfully good on the outside, but it's not going to last long. Moreover, the servants of Huram and the servants of Solomon who brought gold from Ophir brought algum wood and precious stones. We're going back to that report at the end of chapter 8 about the trade mission that Huram had helped set up. From the algum wood, the king made steps for the house of the Lord and for the king's house, lyres and harps for the singers. There never was seen the like of them before in the land of Judah. In other words, Solomon goes out and he gets all these, extraordinary resources, and he builds glorious things, and he makes beautiful things for the house of the Lord and for the king's palace. Meanwhile, King Solomon granted the queen of Sheba every desire that she expressed. Every desire she expressed, meaning that they probably set up some alliances in terms of trade, I think. Well beyond what she had brought to the king. In other words, the resources that she had. Then she returned to her own land with her servants. So Solomon gives her gifts back and lets her take some of what he has to offer. And again, there's that practical aspect of things that's going on here. So now we could see how fabulously rich Solomon was. What was that old TV show, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, or something like that? Yeah, this is the episode of all episodes right here. Solomon, he made Israel a prosperous nation in his days, and he enjoyed much of that prosperity. The weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. That 666 made me think of the number of the beast. 666. I don't know if there's some connection there. Besides that which the traders and merchants brought, and all the kings of Arabia and the governors of the land brought gold and silver to Solomon, engaging in trade, lots of trade. King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold. 600 shekels of beaten gold went into each large shield. He made 300 shields of beaten gold. Then 300 shekels of gold went into each shield, and the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. This is a showcase kind of thing. You're not going to fight with shields of gold. It's kind of like at Williamsburg, Colonial Williamsburg, when you go in the governor's palace, if you go in there, you see all the guns and swords and stuff that are arrayed, a fantastic display. When you go in, they're not really for, use. They're just for decoration to show how mighty and, prosperous you are. Well, he's got shields of gold, set up in this house of the forest in Lebanon. The king also made a great ivory throne and overlaid it with pure gold. Ivory throne overlaid with pure gold. The throne had 6 steps and a footstool of gold, which were attached to the throne. And on each side of the seat were armrests and 2 lions standing beside the armrests, while 12 lions were standing, one on each end of the step on the 6 steps. The like of it was never made in any kingdom. All King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. Silver was not considered as anything in the days of Solomon. Everything was done in gold. For the king's ships went to Tarshish with the servants of Huram. Once every 3 years, the ships of Tarshish used to come bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. Thus King Solomon excelled all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. All the kings of the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put into his mind. There were other people who came to him like Sheba did, the queen of Sheba did. Every one of them brought a present, objects of silver and gold, garments, weaponry, spices, horses, and mules, so much year after year. Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, and 12,000 horses, which he stationed in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. He ruled over all the kings from the Euphrates to the land of the Philistines and to the border of Egypt. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stone, and cedar as plentiful as the sycamore of the Shephelah. Horses were imported for Solomon from Egypt and from all lands. Not a bad display, right? Lots and lots and lots of wealth, and he indulged in it greatly. Verse 29, now the rest of the acts of Solomon, as if there could be anything more. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon from first to last, are they not written in the history of the prophet Nathan and in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite and in the visions of the seer Iddo concerning Jeroboam, son of Nebat? Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel for 40 years. Solomon slept with his ancestors and was buried in the city of his father David, and his son Rehoboam succeeded him. Jeroboam versus Rehoboam, that's coming up next. Solomon was a great king. He really was. But, there's a lot there. Well, I think the first thing, all that accomplishment. And of course, you understand, in even today, whoever has the most glorious looking country, whoever is surrounded by the greatest amount of wealth, that's a great ruler. That's a great king. If your GDP is, high, and you know what it takes to be considered a success in the world. And it basically boils down to a lot of stuff and more stuff and more stuff and more stuff and more stuff. That's how you are a success in this world. And Solomon was a success in the eyes of many in the world, and they came to him both to, make good relationships with him so that, Israel wouldn't make war against them, but also, to learn from him. How did he do this? How did he get all this up? If you see somebody who's succeeding, you want to do the same thing, so you go and try to learn from them. Solomon was a great king. But the other side of having a lot of stuff is that you fall into sin pretty easily. Jesus said it. You cannot serve mammon and God. You will love the one and hate the other. Meaning, you will love mammon and you will start to not serve God any longer. When you can fulfill your every desire and you are building thrones out of ivory covered with gold, you're going to keep going. You're going to indulge every desire. If you go back and read 1 Kings 11, he fulfilled every desire. And he led the nation into sin. Again, you got to tax the people to build all these things, to carry out all this. The taxes were heavy. He enslaved some of the Israelites at some point along the way, evidently. That didn't go over well with people. And so the people felt the burden of it. Solomon, lived in luxury, and Israel altogether was prosperous, but not everybody in Israel was prosperous. And, that's what happens. So I think Solomon got lost in his wealth, got lost in, satisfying every desire, and it led to his downfall. He died a rich and great and prosperous king, but the kingdom falls apart as soon as he's dead. Again, 1 Kings 11 will tell you, that was God's judgment against him. He had multiple wives and concubines and whatnot, and he brought in all the religions of those peoples and established them in the land. He set in motion the factors that, that destroyed the country from within. So the outside looked great, but the inside was not on solid foundation. And again, Solomon was, he was great about building the temple and setting things in motion, and he probably continued to carry out the worship rituals, of the kingdom. He continued to look like a great and righteous king, all the while he was excusing his own sin and leading the people down a path that would bring about their destruction as a nation. That can happen. That can happen. Thoughts, questions, comments? Well, we'll pick up next week at chapter 10. We won't be talking about Solomon anymore. Talk about his son and what happens from this point forward. Thanks for being here. See you next week. Oh, by the way, for the summertime, I know we're coming up to summertime time.